Well, good evening. I'm Jim Nathan. I'm seated with my wife, Karen. We're two of the founders of Floridians for Democracy. I want to thank you for joining Guardians of Democracy Speaking Truth to Power, our program tonight. We're going to hear from three individuals who exemplify moral courage. And we'll present our first Guardian of Democracy Lifetime Award for a life spent defending dignity, truth, and justice. We're in what's called Zoom focus mode, which focuses on our presenters panel. We want you to feel free to submit questions in the chat for discussion later. We gather at a critical moment of our democracy, and state policies, national policies are pushing vulnerable people to the margins, while the wealth gap deepens and enforcement and censorship chill communities and classrooms. These dangers demand awareness and the courage to speak out. In preparing for this evening, we connected with Home of the Brave, a cross-partisan project amplifying everyday Americans' stories, two of whom you will hear from in a few minutes, Ohio farmer Chris Gibbs and Minnesota veteran Ronn Eastman. I encourage you to go to ofthebrave.com. Actually, it's ofthebrave.org, I believe. I wrote that wrong. And listen to many of their stories from everyday Americans and even tennis star Martina Navratilova, who fled a totalitarian regime in 1975 and is today warning about rising authoritarianism in our country. And now it's my privilege to introduce a founding member of Floridians for Democracy, a lifelong witness to history and actually a maker of history. Dr. Robert Hilliard, a World War II Purple Heart recipient, risked everything after liberation to expose the starvation and abuse of Holocaust survivors, ultimately prompting action from President Truman. He's been a pioneer in public broadcasting, a university professor, author of more than 50 books, a playwright, and an unrelenting voice against injustice. Tonight, we proudly present Dr. Robert Hilliard with our inaugural Guardian of Democracy Lifetime Award, something I don't think he ever dreamed of in his almost 101 years. And Bob, as you approached your birthday in 9 days, we are also honoring you with a donation in your name to the national organization Veterans for Peace. Congratulations, Bob. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm overwhelmed, and I'm very encouraged. After a while, you wonder if you're winning anything or losing everything, and this encourages me to keep going on and doing what I've been trying to do all my life, and fulfill my life's mantra, which is be ashamed to die until you've made the world a little better than you found it. So I accept this award humbly and gratefully. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Bob. Would you like to just say a little bit about your journey, and then we'll introduce one of our two additional guests. Bob, would you like to add any more?
You want to add some more about your journey?
No, I think I'll talk about some of the things I have done and would like to do as we get into the program.
Okay, great. We just want to make sure, because your voice is so important and critical, and we'll go along as we go through here, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to chime in and to support these guys. Next, I'd like to introduce Chris Gibbs, Maplewood, Ohio. That's kind of central Ohio. He's a first-generation farmer, where he and his wife Deb and their family manage 560 acres of soybean, corn, and alfalfa, and a pasture-based cattle herd. I don't know how you have time with us this evening, but I guess somebody else is watching the cattle. A 30-year USDA veteran, so government agency, who once led a county farm service agency. Chris now is the leader of Rural Voices USA, and when you hear his voice, you'll understand. He's got a strong and powerful voice. the Rural Voices Network, and serves as president of the Gateway Arts Council, a tireless advocate for rural communities and a powerful voice for farmers throughout Ohio and now, in many ways, nationally. Chris has had a fascinating political journey. After 20 years of Ohio Republican Party leadership, Chris became disenfranchised with the actions of the Tea Party and subsequently MAGA policies. He considered an independent run against the infamous Jim Jordan, and in recent years, he has become a rising leader in Ohio Democratic organizations, including chairing the Ohio Democratic Party's Rural Caucus and the Shelby County Democratic Party. Now we're going to listen to Chris's comments on Home of the Brave, a 1-minute program, and then followed by whatever words he would like to share with us this evening.
Chris Gibbs, I'm a farmer from West Central Ohio. I raise corn, soybeans, wheat, and we've got cattle as well. Started farming from scratch with my wife in 1983. All we had was a pickup truck, $2,500, and a 2-year-old daughter. The last 6 months of the Trump administration have been a disaster for agriculture as a sector. His love for agriculture doesn't match his actions. As a matter of fact, he's made us look hypocritical. Whether it's for the dollars that were put into the big, beautiful bill to keep us silent, to immigration, he's provided no trade deals for us, no new trade to our trading partners, no increase in commodity prices. Farmers are an independent lot. They pride themselves about being independent. He has made agriculture dependent on him. And that's the worst possible outcome for an independent community like agriculture.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
Who's that
You're
guy?
on. It's your time.
Well, thank you for running that video. I can't remember when we shot that, but I'll tell you what, not much has changed. Thank you, Jim. Congratulations, Bob. Ron, good to see you and good to meet you. As Jim chatted just a little bit ago, my journey started actually with 20 years in the Republican administration. I was chair of the party locally in my county for 7 years between 2007 and 2015. After the election, after the 2016 election, and I'll tell you where I was at before that. And I want to give you what my mindset was as far as what I believe the Republican Party was that I grew up with. And I was also chair of the Board of Elections too for a number of years as an appointment. I was on the Board of Elections for 12 years because I believed at that time that the Republican Party of old believed in diplomacy, statesmanship, personal responsibility, and some manifestation of compassionate conservatism. After the 2000 election, I could rapidly see that was not where we were going, and very frankly, that started way back with the Tea Party in the early 2000s, and then kind of metastasized as we got into 2016. By the time we got up to 2018, two things happened. Number one was Helsinki, and when I say Helsinki, and you folks, the individuals that you have on this call, I'm sure are well tuned in to where we've been and where we were at, and probably where we're going. But in 2018, early in the year, spring, then President Trump stood up with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki, Finland, and threw all of our 17 intelligence services overboard, and said that he believed Putin over those folks. And I remember I'd retired at that time from USDA, and I happened to be home. It was in the middle of the day. I think it was 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever. I just happened to be sitting on the couch, which is kind of odd that I was in the house. But I just happened to be sitting on the couch, and I remember I stood up, I jumped up, and I was so mad hearing that, and I had a decision to make. And the decision was, well, I was going to put my foot through the TV, which was going to cost me probably $375 at Walmart to get a new one, or I'd just go outside and cool off. Well, I ended up going outside and cooling off, so it didn't cost me any money. And if that wasn't enough, literally just weeks or days after that, the president had applied punitive tariffs to all of our traditional trading partners all around the world. And the reason that's important from an agriculture perspective is that in the early 80s, after the farm crisis of the early 80s, we ended up with a glut of commodities in 84, 85, and that area. And agriculture said, you know what, we're never going to get in this situation again. We're going to make sure that we get on planes, trains, and automobiles, and we're going to go all around the world, and we're going to make trade deals. We're going to make handshake deals. We're going to deal with the Pacific Rim. We're going to deal with China. We're going to deal with everybody so that we can get our agricultural products put out to the world, because the best way to extract foreign dollars and put them into rural communities is through foreign trade. So the president applied punitive tariffs to all of those folks. And what did they do? They retaliated with their own tariffs against us, and which is America's soft underbelly. If anybody asks you what's America's soft underbelly, it's agriculture. And that took out 20% of the value of my commodities in just one fell swoop. I mean, literally just almost overnight. So I came out swinging. I came out swinging pretty hard. And I wrote an op-ed at the time. I remember pulling over, and I actually came in this building. I'm at the Gateway Arts Council right at the moment, because at home I was afraid that I've got good signal in here in town. I was afraid, because I don't have Wi-Fi out at the farm, that a storm was going to come through and and that I was going to lose signal. So I'm sitting here at the Gateway Arts Council. That's what you see behind me. But I stopped right here at the Gateway Arts Council and pulled over the truck, came in here, and wrote an op-ed. And I talked about what the president was doing, and I wrote this riddle. I said, I slept with a billionaire because he said he loved me. When I got up in the morning, I found out that all I got was screwed. When I went to tell the world about it, he offered me money to keep my mouth shut. Who am I? No, I'm not her. I'm the American farmer. That started a firestorm. I ended up with CNBC, CNN trucks in my barnyard. Ron did Raw Story as well, and the whole 9 yards. So that set me off on a path. I ended up leaving the party in 2019 because I no longer felt that it shared my values. And in 2022, I joined the Democratic Party. And now I'm chair of the Shelby County Democratic Party, of which we are having a hot dog dinner just right up the other alley at our headquarters. And I grabbed this, but I didn't want to eat it in front of you, but I'll show it to you. So I grabbed that off the grill and I came over to this event. So, and I'll tell you this, and I'll finish up. Certainly, much more has happened, but along the way, I lost a little funny story. I lost about 80% of my friends. But what I found out is two things: is that they were friends of proximity. Those were friends that just wanted to be close to the party structure of the Republican Party. So that was the bad news. The good news is I saved a whole hell of a lot of money on Christmas cards. So this is what I'll finish up with. One of the things that I've challenged when I got a hold of the chairmanship of our Democratic Party, which in rural areas, the small parties, the county parties have been decimated because they're just have lost members and so forth. I challenged them. I said, you need to be able to tell why you're a Democrat. And I got my shirt on to prove it here. Why you're a Democrat. And here's why. Because I want to be part of a party that looks for solutions for people, not retribution and revenge against individuals. It's just that simple. I can say it in 6.06 seconds before the elevator door closes. I don't need any floors. So that's my executive story in a nutshell. Thank you for the opportunity for being here. Looking forward to a discussion. And Jim, Karen, again, thank you for your moderation.
Well,
Do you have your sound?
that's, did I turn my sound off?
No,
I didn't turn it off.
But while you were talking, then I recognized you from being on TV. I remember seeing you. Yes, and amazing. Wow.
Thank you, Chris. And Chris will be back on. We're going to have a little panel discussion later, and then you'll have an opportunity for Q&A. Let's welcome Ronn Eastman, a man who embodies what it means to stand on the front lines of democracy. Born in Memphis, Tennessee, a city currently wrestling with systemic efforts to break up minority-led voting districts, Ronn deeply understands the critical need to protect civic representation. As a decorated combat-injured U.S. Army veteran, Vietnam veteran, he took an oath in 1969 to defend this nation, an oath he powerfully lives by to this day. Following his service, Ronn dedicated 23 years to public care at the Minnesota Department of Health, establishing a legacy that fuels his current activism. Featured on national programs as a voice refusing to be silenced, Ronn stepped into the breach when peaceful protesters in Minnesota faced aggressive overreach, delivering outspoken viral truths to demand accountability. He uses his military language a little bit in his communications. So through his on-the-ground activism and his Cover Your Six podcast, he remains a relentless advocate for mental health and civil rights. Yet above all his achievements, Ronn credits his family, his wife Lisa, his daughter, and his 4 grandsons as the anchor driving his fight for a more just world. We're going to watch the Home of the Braves 1-minute video and then hear from another true guardian of democracy who continuously speaks truth to power. All right, Bill, let's see if we got sound this time.
Yeah, let's see if I can have more success here.
My name is Ronn Eastman. I'm proud to be a United States Vietnam veteran. Donald Trump's cuts to the VA is killing soldiers. When you see things like a person lose their life, it stays with you. The smells, the sounds, these are the times when the suicide hotline is crucial. By cutting tens of thousands from the VA, you are putting soldiers' lives at risk. This is not only devastating to the individuals that are being fired, but to the individuals who need that care. He's cutting programs that are desperately needed for cancer research. They don't have time to sit and wait on a cure. They need it now. These are men and women who have served our country honorably and deserve better care. As a rule with the military, when you have been deployed, you never leave a down man behind. And as far as I'm concerned, Donald Trump has left a lot of us behind.
Well, Ronn, thank you for speaking up through Home of the Brave, but you're speaking up in lots of different ways. Now speak up with us.
I thank you so much for the invite. All of this is contrary to what my plan was when I retired from the Department of Health. Having been in the spotlight as an entertainer for well over 40 years and working at the Department of Health and Public Health, I had craved a life of anonymity and just fishing and enjoying my family. But when I saw Trump coming down the escalator, I knew we were in trouble. But then there was a comment that he made in front of a group of West Point cadets that veterans with PTSD are weak. I happen to be one of those veterans with PTSD, and I can assure you that I'm anything but weak. His treatment of John McCain. Now, I never, ever agreed with any of John McCain's policies, but I respected and honored the man for his service in Vietnam, and having been a prisoner of war for as long as he was, there's no way in hell that I would ever disrespect that man. But to stand up and say things like, I like people who weren't captured, or sleeping around was my own personal Vietnam. Not even talking about the 5-time deferments. Somebody else died in his place. So we already had a problem. Now, growing up in Memphis, having been born in 1949, I remember the days of white-only fountains and colored-only fountains. My grandmother was a member of the NAACP in Memphis, Tennessee. So I remember people like John Lewis, Dr. King, Ralph Abernathy, people like that come through my grandmother's living room. So I have been a fighter my entire life. I chose to leave Memphis when I was 14 because I decided that if I stayed here, I was either going to end up in jail, underemployed, or dead. So I moved to Cleveland. Now, I say this to veterans, and I hope they understand that when you raised your hand to that oath of enlistment, there is no expiration date on that oath of enlistment. So therefore, you are whatever you are, soldier, airman, Marine, Navy, whatever, until the day you die. Part of that oath is to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Donald Trump is the biggest threat to our democracy that this country has seen since the Civil War. You look at the people that he hires, the Kash Patels, the Todd Blanches, the everybody else of the world. These are just sycophants that refuse to say no to him. As a result, excuse me, rights that we have had for well over 50 years, he's stripping away. If you take a look at what he's doing in the southern states right now with all of the gerrymandering, taking away the rights of Black folks who have paid in blood for those rights. I can't stand by and watch that happen. So that screwed the anonymity part. When ICE hit Minnesota this winter, I found myself out at the Whipple building. My goal was to just go and see what was going on, but then I saw two Black men among ICE, and I was having a conversation with them to the side. And I asked them, how the hell do you go home and hug your children when you just dragged a Black woman through the snow? One of them had the balls to shoot me a little heart symbol, and that was all I needed to snap. That was when the tirade came with the fur coat on that ended up going viral on The Daily Show to the point where I couldn't even go to Jamaica without being recognized. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. But part of I have been at this for 12 years because Donald Trump is that big of a threat. His entire family, starting with his grandfather who was a pimp, to his father who was a Klansman, to Donald Trump. The entire gene pool has been a threat to this country. And what he's doing as far as raping America of her resources and her money and spending it for the ballroom. Now he wants to put that 250-foot monstrosity of an arch right on the front doorstep of Arlington National Cemetery. That place is hallowed ground to me. I have been there 10 times. And I would rather die than to see that arch be built. So I am doing anything and everything in my power. I collected a petition of over 4,700 names, which I turned over to a Representative Don Beyer from Virginia. I guess he's active in trying to stop this arch. But I encourage a lot of people, more people, to stand up, to speak out, because when you are silent, then they will take that for compliance. Absolutely. So speak up and make your voices and your wishes known. And I thank you for this opportunity. And Dr. Hilliard, congratulations on the award.
Great. That's a great segue, Ron, because we've allocated the next 15 minutes or so, however long it seems to flow, for the three of you to just interact, share perspectives, additional thoughts, comments, feedback on each other's observations, anything that comes to mind. Then we'll open up for Q&A from everybody that's participating. We're up close to 100 now, and we're thrilled and honored to have you join us to hear from these truly brave Americans who speak truth to power. Bob, you were Ron sort of called on you.
Yes, I appreciate that. Next week I'm going to be 101 years old. So what the hell am I doing here? I should be out in the park listening to the birds singing. I'm here because as a combat soldier, in World War II in Europe and in Germany, I saw what happens when people look away and let an authoritarian leader, an authoritarian political group take command of that country. In 2017, I wrote an editorial, guest editorial, an op-ed for the Fort Myers News Press, a Gannett newspaper. The title was The Candidate and the President. And what I did chronologically, I traced factually the policies and the practices of a candidate for president who eventually was president of his country. At the end of the editorial, I wrote his name was Adolf Hitler. I got angry feedback from the Trump followers. How dare you compare Donald Trump with Adolf Hitler? I didn't. In that editorial, not once was Trump's name mentioned. The Trump people themselves saw in the policies and practices of Donald Trump the policies and practices of Adolf Hitler. And they looked away, and too many American people looked away and looked away. And what's the result? The result is that today in Washington, we have, and if you're sensitive to words, right now I'm going to use the F word. In Washington today, we have a fascist government. I've often been asked to speak at various groups about my experiences and impressions of World War II, and I recently did. And I talked about what would have happened to America if Hitler had won World War II. Well, first thing he would have done was to appoint a super Gauleiter to run the country and give that person command of both the legislative and the judiciary. He would have replaced the experienced, learned people who took care of our country's infrastructure and replaced them with people whose only qualification was political loyalty. He would have destroyed education, and he would have done a destruction immediately of our First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, press, and assembly. He would have set up detention camps, I'm talking about Hitler, for people who he considered did not meet his criteria of white nationalists, Aryan master race. And in those camps, he would have put immigrants, people of color, other minorities, with the intention of getting them out of the country, of deporting them exactly the same as he did in Germany. And he would have done something else that, well, you won't believe, you just won't believe that anything like this could happen anywhere in America. He would have banned books. A few days later, I received a copy of the newsletter from that organization. And what they wrote was, Robert Hilliard spoke at our last meeting. Not a word of what I said. The good Americans looked away. They looked away. And you know, for the moment, I imagined I was at the Kit Kat Club in Germany, in Berlin, in 1933. And the Nazis were singing, "Tomorrow belongs to us." And the good Germans looked away. They looked away. And too many good Americans have been looking away for too many years. So where do we stand? What, if anything, can we do about it? Well, you all stick with this program as it goes on. And later on, I'm going to have the opportunity to tell you what I think can be done. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, this is Chris and Ron and Bob, this is your time. So Chris and Ron, you want to react to Bob or add some of your own perspectives?
You know, I look at it this way, and as a Black man, I have been in a country that can't stand my Black ass, that has done everything to marginalize, to denigrate, to separate. And I refuse to let that happen. Back in the day, they had the white-only fountains and the colored-only fountains, the segregated schools, segregated neighborhoods. And that is exactly what Donald Trump and that little human butt plug, Stephen Miller, is trying to do today. And I'm sorry, but I refuse to let that happen. I criticize the African American community because as a rule, we have been historically known for not voting because Black folks feel so disenfranchised because they don't feel like their voices have been heard, and they haven't for the most part. But then you get the people who say, well, you continue to play the race card. Well, when you son of a bitch deal the deck, yeah, we're going to play that card. Because you have made it necessary for us to play that card. So I say to my brothers and sisters in the African American community or the people in the LGBTQ or any other marginalized community, this is your time to band together as a unit. Color be damned. The power of one is what you need to take a look at here. As a unit, you will be unstoppable. The midterms are in 5 months from now. And there's an old thing about you have to stay ready. That way you don't have to get ready. Because what they are going to do, you see, they were trying to play with the thought of habeas corpus or putting armed ICE or whoever at polling places. This cannot be. And your voices come, I think there's another No Kings rally coming up. That is indeed when I will be able to gauge, because the first one there was like 7 million. The second there was 10 million. There needs to be close to 100 million people on the streets of this country. I don't mean worldwide. I mean just in these here states that they'd like to call united, but anything else but. You need to make your voices heard as one. And I will leave with this. If one person is oppressed, we're all oppressed, period.
Beautiful. Well said. Well said. Chris, some observations?
Hey, well, between Bob and Ron, those are hard stories to follow. My space that I'm working in is the rural space. And as it's not lost on people that rural America, rural voters have voted red since, well, the decline of the party that I work in now, the Democratic Party, I would say 20 to 25 years has shrunk in these rural counties. So my goal is this, and by the way, when I left the Republican Party, and I hung out for 3 years as an independent, in Ohio we call them an undeclared, that I did not declare a party. But when I saw what Ron and Bob were describing, I believed that if I was going to make a difference, if I was going to stand up, that the tool that I had was to get into Democratic Party leadership. And because that was the only tool I believe that we have, other than, of course, what Ron talked about, the No Kings rallies. And by the way, I'm glad that those are organic. Those need to be organic across the United States. Very frankly, not party led. I've received some pushback about that, but I've been encouraged to take up the mantle as a party and start those No Kings rallies and those protests and so forth. And I've resisted that, and I'll tell you why. Because the moment that you slap a party label on something like that, everybody goes to the corners, and it becomes much less effective or not effective at all. So what I've chosen to do here in my space of the tools that I have, start listening to rural voters and start bringing them back. They don't have to become Democrats. That's not the goal. But when you get into the voting booth is private. And I want to encourage them to give us a look. So just briefly, I'll tell you what we worked on as soon as I got a hold of the chairmanship of the Rural Caucus. Was we did something in Ohio that hasn't been done. I don't know if it was done forever. We divided up the state into 9 different regions. And we launched a listening tour all around the state between October and December of last year. And I talked to hundreds and hundreds of people in rural areas. These are rural folk. And it doesn't have to be farmers. And by the way, rural America, rural Ohio is not all farmers. It's small town mayors, it's villages. That's one side of the equation. And then there's agriculture as well. We talked to those folks. And what they told us was this. I wanted to know, what's really going on out here? What really happened? What really happened? Why did you drift away from one party and these counties became all red and MAGA?
Yeah. And
the results weren't all that complicated. They felt unheard. They felt that their voices weren't being heard, their concerns weren't being heard, that they weren't being listened to. And other things as well. But this is the key. These folks in rural areas are not policy voters. They don't vote for lower taxes alone. They don't vote for this policy or that policy. These are values voters. They have believed that their core values, whatever those are as an individual, have been under attack. And you might ask, why in the holy hell would you then want to support an individual that has probably the least amount of moral and courage values of any of us?
Right.
Why would you do that? And it comes down to this, that they believed that the barbarians were at the door for their core values. So they hired their own barbarian. And that's where we're at. So my job has been, and again, I'm having a political discussion here, but my job is to elevate the status of the Democratic Party and find shared values between the Democratic Party and our rural voters. And when we talk about values, because again, these are values voters, the charge of the Democratic Party for me, of what I'm trying to do in Ohio, is to ensure that we look for, listen, and find and demonstrate those shared values. Because when you talk to an individual voter and you listen to them, and I shouldn't have said talk to, I should have said listen to. When you listen to these rural voters, what you'll find, if you listen long enough, you will find a shared value. The discussions a lot of time go like this. You're kidding. Your sister must have went to catechism with my brother. Boom. You got him. Now you're a real person. Now you can talk about policy because you've established yourself that you share some values. Okay. That's just one little dinky small example. So that's what we're working on here, to bring folks back to making another look at the Democratic Party, because I believe that where we're at, what Bob has described, is certainly an imbalance of power, of influence. And the only way to rebalance that is through a stronger Democratic side to rebalance that scale. So I'm trying to do that one voter at a time.
I want to comment and thank you, because you started to explain something that Jim and I experienced 2 years ago when we both grew up in Cincinnati, and we went to Miami University, met at Miami University, Oxford, Ohio. So we went to a Bengals game. We flew up from Fort Myers to go to Cincinnati to watch a Bengals game. But before the game, we thought we'll drive back to campus, to Miami University, and just for, memories, old time's sake. As we got away from the city out into the rural area and approached Oxford, obviously we could see poverty. We could see people living in trailers. We could see wrecked cars in their driveways. Not really farms, but rural, maybe an acre or two. And Trump sign after Trump sign after Trump sign until we were right outside Oxford, Ohio, where the university is. No Trump signs there. And we thought, why? I mean, these people obviously are poor. Why do they have all these Trump signs? Why are they voting for Trump? And you helped explain that, and that can be used not just for Ohio, but for Florida, for all states. And that helps me, and I'm sure it helps Jim understand better. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Two things. Number one, those Trump signs, by the way, are gone. They're
Oh,
gone. Yeah.
oh,
They very few anymore in the rural areas. And the worst thing we can do with these folks, and they're our neighbors, by the way, they're our neighbors. The worst thing we can do to these folks is to tell them how dumb they are. That's like telling farmers why you voting for Trump, because it's just a question is an accusation. You're never going to get them back that way. So you have to continue to demonstrate your shared values, your work in the community, and so forth. And the second thing I'll say is this: I want to give you, Jim, the link to the listening tour report. This is the key. I built this report at Building Country Roads for Candidates to Run On, because I believe that the core responsibility of any local county party is to build country roads, is to build roads for candidates to run on. In other words, to cut brush so that they don't have to do that when they get into a community, to lay that foundation. So I'm going to send that link to that report, Jim.
Great.
And if you'd be so kind to dump it out to all of your listeners here tonight, that it's out in the wild, and this is a key finding of. And Ohio is not unique, by the way, other than the Ohio State Buckeyes, go Bucks. But the Ohio is not unique in the fact that what's happening in rural Ohio is the same thing that's happening all across the Midwest, the upper Midwest. And you could make a case all of the flyover states in rural America have experienced the same thing, that move to the red voting. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great. One of the things that sort of ties into what Chris has been doing, and you mentioned it, Ron, is you see in the Black community this, why should I go vote, or not just giving up, and yet there's a fundamental aspect in so many phenomenal Black leaders throughout history of not giving up. And this is that moment where we're trying to find ways to bring people together, as happened in the 1960s. In 1963, March on Washington, and bringing people of all stripes, religions, economic backgrounds, etc., to Washington and saying enough is enough. We're not going to do this anymore. And then the Voting Rights Act comes out of it, and good things came from it. We're trying to find ways to bring that together. One of the things I was going to mention later, but I'll just say it now. On August the 29th, we are working with an 800-person Black church in Fort Myers, but we will be Zooming, and we want to go viral with it. And we're calling it a rally of hope. And the hope is not just hope by itself, but the strategy of getting people out to vote and to realize that their voice counts. And so we're looking at speakers and skits and events and activities that will go on with it that have a chance. And we picked that date, fascinating. It's the day after the 63rd anniversary of the 1963 March on Washington. And we want it to be a multicultural event that gives hope, at least hope in deep red Southwest Florida, but also bring hope and spread it far and wide, and excitement. And it's through connections like with you all and Home of the Brave and other organizations that we work with that we hope once we get this set up, that we'll be able to get the message out, and others will want to celebrate and have hope with us. Thoughts, I guess I was leading to rambling, but leading to Ron, more about the voice to get the African American community to realize that what you said earlier, that the vote, how critical their vote and their voice is.
Like Chris had mentioned, you can't come and tell a person just how stupid you are, because they're going to lock down and will not hear anything that you have to say from that point on. Then you have your portion of the Byron Donalds, the Tim Scotts. I call them Judas goats. Judas goats were basically a one goat that was trained to go out into the pasture to lead other goats back to slaughter. And that is indeed what has happened with the Byron Donalds and the Tim Scotts in the world, because you will see some prominent African Americans who will speak up on behalf of the GOP. And I even heard a Black minister try to justify slavery. As a matter of fact, he said, "I thank God for slavery." So there are, especially in the South, they're still fighting the Civil War. And to get someone to move off the dime where they have been their entire life is almost impossible. Now, some Black folks have a case of the ass. I'm sorry for putting it that way, but they're pissed because they felt like President Obama owed them something. And I have stressed all along that President Obama was a president of all people, not just Black folks. So I guess that idea that we are owed something, nobody owes me anything. I take what I want. If I want it that bad, I'm going to work my ass off and make sure I attain my goals. We have to set different goals in the African American community, starting with the fact that we need to protect our children's futures. Because you have books that are being banned right now that are foundational for African American youth, for queer youth. And all of a sudden, because they offend someone else's sensibilities, they're going to ban. That's Nazi Germany type tactics, as Dr. Hilliard had mentioned earlier. We don't do that here. We don't allow that here. And when I say we, I mean everybody, not just Black folks, white folks, brown folks, everybody. So again, that idea of one as a unit of one, that's where we need to get to quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Beautiful. Bob, thoughts?
When you And your video, there are pictures of you very young in Vietnam. And I'm wondering, what would you say to that young person now? What would you tell him with all the knowledge that you have now?
Oh my God.
What would you say to that young person standing there and about to fight, I guess, with his rifle and about
I've never had anybody ask me that question. I would tell that young troop to not waste so much time. Because after I left Vietnam, I knew something was wrong with me, but nobody had really put a label like PTSD on it. I knew that I was having failed relationships. I knew that I was having moments of rage that made me dangerous, not only to myself, but to others. So I would tell that young me, heal thyself a lot quicker than what I did, and to grow up a lot quicker than what I did. That there's nothing more precious than being a man of honor. So you stand by your word. If you give your word, you stand by your word. That's what I would tell me.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Bob, you got some words you'd like to share, and then we'll go into Q&A, open up for Q&A.
Yes, I do have a number of words, and I hope not to take up too much time. Ron, I very much appreciate what you said. And I think we've got to look away from stereotypes. And we have stereotypes in so many areas, among so many groups. At the present time, we have an African American man, a representative, running for governor of Florida. Trump has never apologized for showing the video in which the Obamas were pictured as apes. This Black representative running for governor has 3 children. By implication, Trump was calling these kids apes. And he never, the man running for governor, never confronted Trump or said anything about this. That's part of what a problem is in the United States. People are scared to death to reach any of the protocols from the people who are now running the country because they know what fascists can do. Now, let me follow up from what I said earlier. I said I would try to suggest some way that we can deal with the present situation. And I'm going to coin a concept and a slogan. Be mad, M-A-D, be mad. M-A-D. Make America a democracy again. M-A-D, we ought to be wearing M-A-D-A caps. Make America a democracy again. We should be wearing M-A-D-A buttons. And we should stay mad and continue to stay mad until we don't have to be mad anymore. Now, we band of brothers and sisters who are gathered here today are here because we care, because we believe that it's not too late to save democracy in America. All of us working together, giving our time, our energy, our talents, we can make a difference. Every one of us has to reach out to as many people as we possibly can, using whatever means we can, whether it's an internet or walking to your neighbor's house across the street and telling them what's happening in this country, telling them not to look away anymore. Tell them, don't look away, don't look away. Arthur Miller, author of one of the great plays, American History, Death of a Salesman, has a line in that play that not only gives us the essence of the play, but pertains to what we are doing today. Attention must be paid. I'm reminded of a song by a great folk singer, Woody Guthrie. And I'm going to recite just the last 4 lines. You fascists will find it surprising that the people are organizing. You fascists are doomed. You fascists are doomed. Thank you for being here and listening.
Wow. Powerful. A voice of knowledge, reason, and power, speaking truth to power. Well, thank you, all 3 of you. We're going to open up now and go off of focus mode, and people can raise their Zoom hand down at the bottom where it says raise hand. Put it up. It'll take you to the front of the line, and you'll be able to ask your questions and or share any observations or comments with our special panel. So with that, we are off of focus mode. Bill, we're good. And we have Joyce from A. Joyce, you're up, and feel free, people, to raise your hand and get into the fray here. Share your thoughts, questions, etc. Joyce, and then Dave.
Yes, thank you for organizing this wonderful program. It's so inspirational to see Bob Hilliard with us after all these years and his lifelong commitment, and the work of Chris Gibbs and following his conscience, which he's along with David Brooks in changing his view about the Republican Party. And Ronn Eastman, I admire you so much for being one of those people in Minnesota that stood out there. You cared. I have been complaining about the Democratic Party for recent years for their failure to care about the marginalized and to care and have heart about the working class and the farmers. Everything is intellectual elite operating out of the head and talking policy, and all the people feel neglected. So how does the Democratic Party convey to the public that they are the ones that really care about them, that will do something for them and won't just feed their fear and their anger? I see Trump as a demonstration of the failure of the Democrats, and it breaks my heart. But I feel a lot of it is the Democrats have lost their heart and their soul too. They're living too much in their heads. So how do we change this so that the public knows that people care about the marginalized and care about the working class and care about people? What do we do?
If I might say something to that, especially the part about Trump is a result of the failure of Democrats. I got to throw my bull flag on that one. Trump is a result of racism, of people's innermost racist thoughts at the fact that we had a black president in office. Okay? That's when people got their ass up on their shoulders and got mad. So Trump was like their great white hope. And as far as what Democrats can do, Democrats need to not be diverted by all of the side actions that are going on and continue to present bills for the betterment of the people, that continue to present bills that will expose the 12 the men who raped those and molested those 1,200 women on Epstein Island. That's the big pill here. Once the Epstein files, if they ever come out released, you will find out just what an individual we have been dealing with and what he has been hiding all along, because he is no better than Jeffrey Epstein. That's what this is all about. That's the reason why we lost 14 people, supposedly 14 people, at a war of choice. He's trying to bury the Epstein files.
Beautiful. Bob or Chris, any comments?
In my world, here in Shelby County in Ohio, a number of things. Number one, demonstrating our shared values. And I understand that's difficult and it's somewhat elusive, but it's a long rebuild. When I got a hold of the chairmanship, I told people that was September of 23. I told them it was going to take 10 years to rebuild this brand. And that was right after they elected me. I thought when I said that, they were going to unelect me because they wanted immediate results in 24. This is a long rebuild. It's all about shared values and redemonstrating what in my county, in my state, how Democrats held more than 50% of the county-wide offices, the county commissioners, the auditor, the recorder, the engineer, the sheriff, all of those were held by Democrats when I grew up. And why is that? Because they stuck to honesty, integrity, hard work, and service to community. Those were the four things. And as the party started to zoom off into these other areas, okay, smaller issues, that's where we started to lose people, because we weren't talking about the economy. We weren't talking about healthcare costs, personal economy of people, things that really mattered. So we had to get back to that because that's core values. And we need to do this. I'll finish up. The party needs to be for things, not against things.
Amen.
We need to be for things, not against things. Against things, anybody can do that. But if you're for something that's better, it gives somebody a guiding light of what you can bring to the table. We have to be for things, not against them.
Great. Thank you. Dave, you're up.
Yeah, I'm actually one of Bob's long-lost cousins. I'm so sorry we haven't met yet. I'm up in New York. You've met my brother several times. But it's so fascinating to hear, well, everybody, but Chris's talk about values voters is very interesting, and Ron has such experience with, well, let's say foreign wars, as does Bob. I'm wondering how you make a link for people, for voters, with our international adventures, specifically the Middle East, which is totally out of control, and we are responsible for the genocide that's ongoing there. And I know that people mostly don't vote based on foreign policy, but foreign policy has a way of blowing back and influencing how our society operates. And that is not just an American thing. That goes back through all the kinds of authoritarian governments in history. So I'm just wondering if in each of your experiences, you have any thoughts on the possible unity of domestic and international questions.
Ooh, you know, I will say this, and probably people are going to be very upset, but for too long now, Israel has had undue influence on the White House. Basically, Donald Trump has become Bibi Netanyahu's bit. And that's the reason why we are in this war of choice. Israel has been a staunch ally, and we have been an ally of Israel, but we see ourselves as a policeman of the world, and I say you lead by example. Clean up our own house first. So that way you have some room and some confidence to speak about what other countries should do. We can't be a policeman for the entire world. I just say be a better us and be a prime example. Our reputation since Donald Trump has come in office has just been eviscerated. We are no longer the leader that we were. We are no longer commanding the respect that we had before. That's what we have to get back in order to be a shining example.
Bob or Chris, any other observations on the tie of international activities?
I can speak to how rural Ohio, rural America, particularly in the farming community, how I've approached this question, and that's this: it's in economic terms, because again, at the end of the day, if you look at issues as a triangle of up at the top of the triangle that are important issues, but they're not as important as the smaller ones because they get less voters, or they make a difference to less voters. A person's personal economy is first and foremost. In the ag sector, if we're going to talk about foreign wars, particularly the Iran war, that has had a direct adverse effect on U.S. agriculture. The price of diesel fuel, by the way, 2 weeks ago it was higher. Price of diesel fuel was higher than it was during COVID. It had 6 in front of it. My semi gets 5.7 miles to the gallon, and that's very standard. So that cost me money. I'm just finished the planting season, pretty much. The highest amount of diesel fuel I use is right then. So diesel fuel doubled. The price of fertilizer doubled. And when I say fertilizer, I'm talking about nitrogen fertilizer that feeds our corn crop. We raise 97 million acres of corn in this United States. All of it has to be fed with synthetic, we'll call it synthetic, but created nitrogen fertilizer. Nitrogen fertilizer doesn't appear on the earth like phosphorus and potash do the other commodities or the other fertilizers. So, and that's a direct result. Nitrogen fertilizers is a direct result of natural gas from the Middle East. That's how it's made, much of it. So in the farming community, they understand what this war of choice, thank you, Ron, for saying that, reminding us, this war of choice has cost. And if that's not enough, I continue on a daily basis to remind farmers, to remind rural America of the other costs that are going into their rural communities. And that's tariffs. When we're tariffing, all of our traditional trading partners all around the world, what we're putting tariffs on are the 3 things that farmers use that go right into rural communities: steel, aluminum, lumber. What in the hell do you think I use to build things with? Those 3 commodities are tariffed, and they cost me more money. So we continue to put it in those kind of terms, and that has moved the needle in the agricultural sector. Agriculture, rural communities are slowly starting to clear their throat, and find a voice, because they know that their personal economy is being threatened. And that's what means something to them. So that tide is turning, but we have to continue to remind people of that without blaming them for how they voted in the past. Say, hey, We're here as a farmers union, as whatever the organization is, as Rural Voices, and we're calling this out on your behalf. We're calling it out because we're standing up for you. And as a Democratic Party, we are for lower prices. We are for lower tariffs. We are for things, and that's how you frame it, not against.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Randy's up, and then Warren, and then Bill.
Hi, thank you. First of all, congratulations, Dr. Hilliard. This question is primarily for you, but also for Mr. Easton. My father is a few months younger than you. He won't be 101 until January. He's totally aligned with everything we think. But what he has found, particularly when he was in a wonderful veterans care facility in Cleveland, he found that almost all of the other veterans around him were voting for Trump or supporting Trump. In fact, several of the nurses used to hang out in his room because he had MS Now on television versus Fox. And so I'm curious if either of you have a view as to why the veterans still believe that Trump is acting in their best interest and supporting them. Because when you see how he's decimated the VA, as Mr. Easton said, and several other things that impact veterans, if you have any explanation for that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Bob, do you want to go first? Do you have any observation?
What am I supposed to do? Oh, questions to me?
Yes, why
Yeah.
are people?
Okay, thank you. I've hesitated because, they say that the first 100 years are the hardest. That's not true. My second 100 years have started out with my not being able to read anymore because of eyesight, not being able to hear even with good hearing aids. So the second 100 years does not promise to be very, very good physically, but I just hope it turns out to be better politically than we've had for 8 of the last 10 years.
And why are
Now, why do veterans go with it? Because they don't know. First of all, if you're in the service, you are brainwashed. You're brainwashed from the first day in basic training. And you become a super patriot without thinking what is involved and what is better for the people. I think if we can reach out and talk to veterans as well as everybody else, and not confront them, but just try to help them understand what this country really is about. And it's not about authoritarianism. It's supposed to be about democracy and free speech. We can do it if we take our time and energy and reach out to, I would like to say to people, and many of you are already doing this, tonight, before you go to bed, reach out to 5 people and tell them what you think has to be done to restore democracy, and tell them to reach out to another 5 people, and another 5 people. Any way we do it, we've got to reach the people and tell them to stop looking away.
Okay.
Well, Ron, anything to add to that, to what to say?
You know what, Dr. Hilliard, number one, I know I will never get to be 101 years old, but man, you make it look damn good. So I'm going to give you that. Here's what I noticed. As I have mentioned before, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. So I was born in the heart of the South. And I saw racism damn near from its inception. I never really realized just how much racism there is within the United States military. I realized it when I got to Vietnam, and there was, separate groups there. Everybody wore the same color, green, but they weren't the same. Everybody was, the heads were over here, the juicers were over here, the whites were over here, the blacks were over here, the Latinos. Now, we had a common enemy. and we still couldn't come together as one unit to defeat that common enemy. We have to start seeing people as one. We all have a common goal. The betterment of our society, the betterment of our lives, the less stress on our pockets, a future for our children and grandchildren. That has no color to it. None. And that's the way we have to look at this. But we have to get rid of, it's like the racist soldiers, the ones who vote for Trump, those are the loudest ones. They stand up loud and proud with their MAGA hats on and the other little accoutrements that come with that, where others don't so much step out. They need to step out more.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ron. So Warren and then Bill.
Okay, I needed to get my microphone turned on.
You're on.
This is a thought about what needs to be done and what has happened in the past. I've been running through a bunch of old emails, and I'll let you guess as to when this email was written. It starts out, the right to vote in and always this text is small, so I'm having a struggle. Always has been at the foundation of our democracy. But this fundamental right is under serious attack right now in Florida and more than a dozen other states in the South. Many believe hands-on, super rich conservative activists are behind and orchestrating the effects of millions of seniors, younger voters, and minorities from casting ballots next year. The letter goes on and talks about what's going on about the state of Florida and the voting. It was written by Bill Nelson, and the date of that letter was November 8th, 2011.
Mhm.
We need to pay attention to what has been going on and what hasn't been going on. What hasn't been going on is much more important than what has been going on. We need to make sure people understand what's been happening to the state, what's been happening to the people, what Ron DeSantis and his Congress has been doing to the state. We need to get out and scream higher than anybody's ever screamed before how much wrong has been done to the state.
Thank you, Warren. I guess you're saying we should be mad.
Mad as well as active. Just get out there and talk. There's going to be people that are going to resist what's going on. I'm part of the Sierra Club, and I'm an audience leader. And to get people to come out with me and walk, it takes talk. Convincing people that it's okay to get out into the forests or the paths and experience nature. We need to talk to people about getting out and experiencing the Democratic Party and what it can offer to the people. There we go. That's it.
Thank you. Bill, you want to share your thoughts?
First, an unsolicited editorial comment. If anyone has any thoughts about the disrespect for which the current president holds our military, look at the individual that he has named to serve as the Secretary of Defense. Totally incompetent. But my question for our panelists is strictly this. Are you confident that our midterm elections will be, in fact, free and fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there has been so much attention paid to it, and there are so many things that are being done to make sure that it's not fair, that I truly believe. As a matter of fact, somebody just stated it the other night, Chuck Schumer, some other people, they will be ready for anything and everything that comes up. So barring any unforeseen circumstances like the reduction of habeas corpus or armed troops at the polling places, I have faith that they will be a fair election.
I'm going to back Ron up on that. I spent 12 years on the Board of Election managing poll workers. We had 144 poll workers in Shelby County, in our rural county. Every one of those folks, regardless of party, is patriots, are patriots. and they're there to serve. We have to have faith in people. We have to have faith in the process. I'm gonna go with we're gonna be good.
Oh, good.
Great. Thank you.
Bob.
Thank you for your question, Bill. Bob, you haven't, let's do this. Chris and Ron, do you have any closing comments? And then we're going to call on Bob, and then we'll wrap up and talk about what's coming next.
No, as a matter of fact, I was going to say I have to kind of take off because my bride just got home and we have a previous appointment. But I want people to understand that silence is complicity. And I said that before, that your voice right now is the most important thing on the face of the earth, because the midterms, if we don't win the midterms, if we don't turn the tide there, we're screwed for the next 2 years and beyond.
Beyond.
Yeah.
So the midterm is the linchpin. That's the key that we need to turn the tide. Donald Trump has to be held responsible for a myriad of things, not to mention a $400 million airline from Qatar, or the billions of dollars that he is siphoning from the United States economy, from the destruction of a house that is not his,
Yeah.
to the destruction of the South Lawn with this UFC crap, to the tearing up of the Rose Gardens, to the reflection pool, which is now nothing more than a scum pond. He needs to be held responsible. And if the midterms go the way I think that they're going to go, he will be. So Jim and your lovely bride and Mr. Hilliard and Chris, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. Be with your bride.
Proud to hear that.
Chris, closing comments.
I'm gonna bolster both Ron and Bob. Silence is complicity. That's a line that I use. Thank you, Ron, for reminding us of that. Here's my message. It's the same as Bob's. I've got 2 grandsons. 7, one's 7, going on 8. The other one is 4, going on 14. In 10 years or so, maybe less for the one, they're going to come to me and they're going to say, Grandpa, what were you doing during the whatever period we're going to call this? And I hope they don't call it the Trump period. They're going to come to me and they're going to say, what were you doing? And I'm going to be able to stand and I'm going to be able to look them in the eye and tell them, I stood up. I wasn't silent. I didn't hide under a bushel. I didn't care. I made a difference. I used my voice. And that's what I want for everybody that's on this call. That's what Bob challenged us for. That's what Ron challenged us to do. I stood up. I wasn't silent, regardless of the consequences. That's my message.
Thank you, Chris. Closing words, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you.
Closing words.
Hello? Thank you. Thank you. You know, we no longer have the luxury of time to contemplate the question. We got to hit the bricks and get out there and get something done. Trump has already said, if necessary, he will call an emergency and suspend the elections. So don't be too sure that we are still in a mode of having a democratic election. We may not.
Thank you. And happy birthday, Bob. A few days early.
Thank you.
We're honored to be able
Thank
to
you.
honor you, Chris, and Ron had to leave, but your passionate comments and observations were well taken. We always like to use our programs to turn them into action. And you've heard a lot of recommendations from our panel this evening, and we will try to capture those and put them at what we call our action agenda, which will be published in the next couple of days. And we will also link the video to this entire program in that, and it'll also be on the Floridians for Democracy YouTube channel. So if any of you have any inclinations of wanting to donate to keep the word out and to help us, we don't need a lot to operate, but we always need something to keep our messages going. Your contributions help to support communication, social media, and other education and advocacy activities. I've already mentioned we've got a phenomenal program we're planning for August the 29th, 63 years after the 1963 March on Washington, from an 800-seat Black church in Fort Myers. But we want it to be throughout Florida, but hopefully go viral globally, and we'll see what we can do with that. If you don't try and you don't have some hope, we'll never get there, but we hope that hope turns into vote, and we appreciate your time and energy and your willingness to be with us this evening. We had a great turnout. A lot of nice comments came to me privately about the panel and the strength and the power of these voices. I hope that for each of us that we've come up with some of our own words and our own ways to speak truth to power and to be a guardian of democracy. Thank you for everyone for this evening. We usually stay on if people want to chit chat, but the program will be officially concluded now with happy birthday, Bob.